Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 38, where I was black and my opponent played the London system. So let's take a look at how this happened. I'm leaving the opening book off for now and also the engine because there wasn't much information there. We got out of book pretty quickly because my opponent played the move order. So I'm playing knight f6, thinking to play later e6 and follow up with a Nimzo Indian, but that requires my opponent to play moves like c5 and c4 and knight to c3. But instead he played bishop to f4. And so this setup, if the knight comes here and the pawn goes there, this is known as the London system, which happens later in the game. The immediate bishop here is a little bit unusual. And so I go for a setup where I play d6, and this is the combination of these two moves takes us out of the opening book entirely. But this is not a bad move at this point. But I did have a mistaken idea, which was I was getting this setup where I'd have the bishop here, and I was going to put the knight here, and then I was going to try and play e5. So that was the idea I had with this setup. And I'll show you why later. That's a mistaken idea. It just turns out it's not possible for me to ever get in the move e5 and when white plays the way that white has played in this game. So I castled. Notice the move h3 from white gives a escape square for the bishop in case I play knight to h5 here, attacking the bishop, and the bishop just will retreat back to the square h2. So we continue developing, and here I thought maybe I would have a chance to play e5 now, maybe knight h5 first, hitting the bishop, he retreats, and then e5. But then I realized he could play g4. I would push the bishop back, and then I would lose the pawn. So instead, I played this move, rook e8, to support the pawn push. And this turns out to be a horrible mistake. There's a great tactic for white here, and if you want to take a few seconds, it's not right on the surface. It's maybe 3 moves deep, but it's worth searching for. And they're all forcing moves. That's a clue. So why don't you think about it for a while? And if you want more time to think about it, pause the video. I think this is a worthwhile tactic to put into your bank of tactical patterns. I'm going to go ahead and give away the answer now, so pause your video, your last chance. The tactic starts, bishop takes f7 check. And if I just run away with my king, then he can grab the rook, and he's just won the exchange and a pawn. And so he's doing well. So, but you wonder what happens if king takes bishop. Hasn't he just lost a bishop? Well, the follow-up move is knight g5 check. Okay, so what's the big deal? Well, the king can't come forward, so he's got to go back. Say he goes back here. It doesn't actually matter which square he goes to. Then the third move, this is the key to the trick. Knight e6. The queen is trapped, and the knight attacking the queen there. The queen has been checkmated effectively. So that would be pretty much game over. So let's back up and take a look at that from the starting position right here. Yeah, white's a move, and it's just a 3-move tactic, but it puts the game away right away. So always good to be alert for these kind of tactics. And also the idea of bishop takes f7 and knight g5 is a common pattern in many tactics. A lot of times the follow-up might be to bring the queen out and attack the king, but here the vulnerable piece is the queen. So it's check with the bishop, check with the knight, and then knight to e6, attacking the queen, and the queen has no escape. So instead of rook e8, I should have played something like c5. But anyway, fortunately for me, my opponent castled here and didn't spot that tactic. And so I went ahead with my plan of playing e5. And now here's the second reason why e5 is not really possible in this position. It turns out that white can just take it. And the reason is because the queen being opposite my queen, after I take back with the knight, he can exchange queens, pull the rook away, and so he just wins that pawn. So let's see how it happens. So if he were to play new variation, take the pawn, and I take back, and he takes the pawn, and I keep taking. I have to take with the knight now. Then he can take my queen first. I need to take back, and then he can take my knight. And so he's just won a pawn for nothing. And so that would be good. Good for white. So fortunately for me, my opponent missed that one too. That one's a little more obvious. I think in a blitz game you should be able to find things like that. So, but I'm just counting my blessings. He retreated bishop to h2, and the game continues. And I played c6, thinking maybe to get in d5 and try and shut out this bishop. And let's see, somewhere along here, yeah, I play here, kicking his knight. He should have gone to the square d2 to put more pressure on this pawn. He went back here, and then I brought my knight out, hitting the bishop. Okay, and now this is a place where I have a good move. And once again, it's not entirely obvious why this move is possible. But it turns out, yeah, I'll go ahead and play it. I didn't play it in the game. I was worried about things like pawn takes pawn and queen takes pawn, but that is not something to worry about. It turns out I can just take that pawn. And if he takes back, I take. He takes, I take, he takes. I thought, well, he's a pawn up. But I have this cool move here, queen b6. And now I'm double attacking this pawn. And the pawn is pinned, because if he moves the pawn forward to b3, which would be natural, then the bishop can take the rook. And if he tries a move like c3 to block it, then the queen can take the pawn. So I get my pawn back, and with a good position, because I'm threatening the knight. Threatening the rook in the corner. So he doesn't even have time to take this pawn. So I missed that idea. Returning the compliment, I guess, of a missing idea. Although that was not such a great tactic, just picked up a pawn. I played c5. I didn't want to mess around with any of that stuff, and the game continues in a pretty even vein here. So I was trying to keep his knight out. I was a little worried this pawn here is weak, and a knight popping into this square and attacking it would be bad news for me. And the game continues up to this point. Right here, let's back up. When I placed my knight on this square, white immediately traded off, and actually this helps black in this position. It allows me to get my bishop to a good square, and if he trades it off, then I can get my queen there, and it creates a permanent weakness in his position. One thing he could do to try and take advantage of my knight on the rim here is he could have played the move g4, kicking this knight. And if I just go back, then he can win a pawn here. Takes. Is that true? No, he's not winning a pawn. I'm sorry. I can just go back. Takes. But then I have to take with a pawn, and I didn't want to do that. It opens up a line for his pieces to come forward, and this is a passed pawn now, which is good for him. So let's back up. And what I thought during the game was if he played the move g4, I would follow up with knight takes here, check. And he would have to take back, and then I would have time to retreat. But it turns out that white has a really strong move here. He can just push ahead with e4, and this is a very classic undermining move. My pawns in the center here are kind of weak, in particular this pawn is weak, and he just attacks it with a pawn, and I have no good way to defend against this. If I take, he can take back with the rook, hitting my queen, and then this pawn can come through too. So this is a good position for white here. So I was lucky he didn't play that. So I went here, and he took my knight, and there was a series of exchanges, and the game continues, and things are about even. And the only thing I have going for me is my opponent, well, he let me shut out his bishop, so this was a good move here when I play this move c4. It gets his bishop out of the game and allows me time to try and get my piece of his active. This knight here is a bad piece too, so it's not like it's not like it's a big advantage for black here. I have to figure out a way to get my knight active, and he has to figure out a way to get his bishop active. So, but it may be a slight edge for black here. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to activate my pieces. I was thinking of this move, F7 to F5, undermining the center and giving the knight a square to go to if we trade off. And he's doing a similar kind of thing. He's trying to undermine the c-pawn here to liberate his bishop, so very logical play. And the only thing I have going for me besides that is my opponent was getting a little short on time here. So when we reach this critical position, yeah, he makes this mistake. And this is actually the last mistake in a sense. So it's chess is just a game where the player who makes the last blunder loses, or the player who makes the second to last blunder wins, as Tarash put it. It's just I made several mistakes earlier and my opponent could have won, but this mistake near the end when he was in time trouble allows me to put the game away. So he just moves his two pieces where they can be forked. And then he's really got to move the queen here, but he tries to pull something tricky, but this ends up just losing a rook for the queen, basically. And also, so if we stop in this position, he gets this check. But if you look at the piece count, it's a bishop, knight, and queen versus bishop, knight, and rook. And on top of that, I can move my king here, and now there's a double attack, and he's going to lose a further piece. So after this, it's pretty much game over. I have to be careful I don't get fall into any particular tricks and traps. But being low on time, he has to make all these moves quickly. And at this point, he resigns. So anyway, I thought that was a very interesting and instructive game. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It's sort of how not to play against the London system, but I'm going to keep trying, and I'll figure out a system sooner or later that works. So leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.